Hello and welcome back to the worst War Machine channel on the internet. I'm Malorian and this is Malorian Weekly. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is actually a topic that was suggested by one of you. I always love when I do that. I post, I ask what you want me to talk about, and then I talk about the things you actually want to hear about rather than just my own little rantings that I do on my own here. Now, the question that I had is, Malorian, how do you learn enemy rules? Now, this could be very simple, right? We could just say, read the rules, and that could be it. But obviously, this is not that simple, right? If you've looked at the time, this is not a 1-minute video. There's actually a little bit more here to talk about. So I think the first thing we should talk about is, why is this even difficult, right? Why is the answer not just read the enemy rules? And the reason is, it just doesn't really stick. I mean, if you are looking at your own faction, right? Let's imagine that a new caster comes out, a new unit, a new solo. You're invested. You want to know what it can do for you, what you can be doing with your own list, where it can be slotting in, what new tactics you can be doing, and you're invested in it, right? You want to learn it so that you can be using it to your advantage. When you're reading something about that's not yours, why do you really care, right? It's like, well, it's nice to know, but sure, I guess, it's almost like being forced to learn something in school that you just didn't care about, right? If you had some random option and it's like, oh, learning the history of some random country or some random language of, a place you'll never go to or a language you'll never use, it's just like, well, I guess I had to do this for the credits, but that's really it. I'm just going to try and force it in, but, once I get past that test, I'm probably just going to forget it, right? Like that type of a thing. And that's where the challenge comes, right? That's the difficulty. So how do you make it real, and how do you make it something that actually just sticks in there? Now, I think the very first thing you need to do when you're trying to take this on is try and make sure that you can add some value to it by obviously taking on the things first that you normally see, right? And even more importantly than that, the things you see and lose to. Because then all of a sudden, if like, man, every single time I face this person at the store or on War Table or wherever it is, this always beats me. Well, obviously, there's some investment now to learn that because you want them to stop beating you. You want to figure out what the tricks are that's beating you so you can actually be beating them, right? And turning the tables on them by using this new understanding. So that's where I would start. I'd be starting there saying, this faction usually beats me, and more importantly, this list normally beats me. And then what you would do is just populate it. Take out your phone, open up your war room, throw that list into there and start just reading through those choices. But that seems to be, like we said in the very beginning, just read it. But again, that investment, right? Now, because you know that there's something more to it, that's great. Now there's actually a reason for you to be paying attention and trying to figure like, oh, so there's that spell. That's what keeps on undoing this. Okay. And then, oh, this has this interaction. Okay. Now I understand how the gears work on the other side. Which will now let you know where to put that monkey wrench in when you're trying to beat it. Now, I think another part you should be doing with this then, with that investment and that same type of a thing, is look at that list and then play with it. And what I mean by that is we have this wonderful thing called War Table right now, and there's nothing stopping you from just at any time. You don't even need an opponent. You just have that list on here and you can just throw it on War Table and you can just like practice the first couple of turns, just being like, okay, this is how it actually deploy on here. This is how it rolls out. And you don't have to do a full game. You don't have to do anything like that. But, we always talk about this when you're trying to learn your own list, that there's benefit for you just practicing that deployment and first turn or two, just so you can understand like, okay, this needs to be near this because of these spells and this interaction. And then this is the way I have to unpack it. This is the way that I'd be setting up my threats. And that's the way you can actually be learning to be doing your list better when you actually get to a game or a tournament or something like that. Again, the same thing's going to help you with that with those opposing models. Again, you had that investment to try and read through the rules because, man, this thing keeps on beating me. But now that's on the table, it's a little bit more of just kind of being like, okay, but how is it supposed to work? I understand the reasoning, but let's actually put now like the rubber to the road. I'm going to actually see how this thing works. And now my mind's really engaged with this and really understanding it. Now, once you get past that, and the things that you're going to be invested in, the stuff that you're losing to, it's really just a gradient from there. So what's something that I don't lose to all the time, but sometimes I do lose to? Or, what's a caster or something that, I know that my opponents have been talking about, but they haven't dropped it. I know it's going to be coming eventually, so I got to be ready. Now, the problem is that once we start working away from that gradient to the stuff like, oh, this keeps on beating me, how do I stop this? To the stuff where like, well, there's a chance that my opponent might play this. How do you actually get that going? And I think that the best way to do that is set yourself up with a schedule. I mean, if I just say, like, oh, well, I got to learn more, so I guess I'll sit here for 2 hours and scroll through. No, that's not going to work, right? You might do 1-2 sessions, get burnt out, get bored, and never do it again. Set a schedule for yourself. Something like, you know what? Every single week on Saturday, I'm going to pick one faction. I'm going to go and pick one type of model. So maybe, a caster, a solo, a unit, a jack, a battle engine, whatever it is. I'm going to pick one thing and I'm just going to read it. I'm going to try and think of how to use it. And if I do that every single week, I'll stay engaged and I'll keep on thinking about all those things out there. Obviously, the more times I can be slotting that in, the better. Maybe every day, as soon as I get home from work and I've, poured myself that drink, you know what? When I first sit down, the first thing I'm going to do is just look at that one random thing and just try and say, okay, I'm going to read through it. And then that's where we're going to have things like, oh, I didn't even know that this thing actually did that. Or, oh, I didn't realize that there's this interaction here. And that's, again, it won't be a thing where it's probably going to have long lasting effects, but it's going to be at least something in there. Something where if you now see it in a month or two, it won't be just like blind stupidity as you play against it. You'll be like, oh, that's that thing that okay, now there's a little bit more of understanding there. Now, if you're really dedicated and you really want to learn these things, it's not even so much of just trying to throw in that sort of like a schedule of learning to try and slowly go through these things. The next stage would be actively trying to learn them. Now, this will be going a little bit back more to that investment, and we're going to be loading that list, and we're going to be trying to do that turn 1 and that turn 2 plays to really kind of like make sure that understanding is in there in our heads. Now we're going to push this even to the furthest level and say, you know what, especially in this world of War Table, and it doesn't matter what models are out there because, hey, they're all just pixels on the screen. Just join a random tournament, a random event on the War Table somewhere. And you know what? Just go with the random faction and a random set of casters. We've been doing that here locally, actually. A couple of people started just for fun, and more and more people jumped on it. And it's amazing how much you learn from that, because it's not even just like the one random like, oh, well, today I'll be learning this solo from this faction, and then now this battle engine from here. No, now it's like, okay, I have to learn these 2 casters, and I have to be making lists for these 2 casters. So obviously all the pieces that'd be going into them, I have to build that. But now I actually have to analyze the lists and the factions to know what'd be the best way to build this, the best way to build that. Sure, maybe I might steal like a net list or something like that. But either way, I am now forcing myself to actually having to build them and to play with them and understand them, because now I'm actually using them competitively. I'm going to be going against somebody else on the other side. They're using something which presumably, unless they're doing the same thing as you, they know well, and you are using this random caster. And I think that doing this is going to do 2 things for you. One, the primary objective, which is you're going to be learning these enemy things much better, because you're going to learn them as well as your own faction, because they are now basically your own faction. I think the other thing too it's going to do for you is increase your fun that you're having in the game, and also open up your mind to other strategies. So what I'm saying here is we can get really locked in our ways of like, okay, I'm a Haley 2 player and I never lose because rah, 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 rah. But you know what? When you're playing a random faction and you have that excuse, you have that ability to say like, hey, look, I know you kicked my butt. By the way, this was a random faction, or maybe I'm not even bragging about that point. I just know in my head, right? Who cares if I lose because this is just a random faction and random caster, right? This is not a hit against me. I'm taking a severe handicap going into this match, which means I can now not focus on the competitiveness and have a little bit more fun. I can go for those jank plays. Slam something for no reason? Sure, why not? And at the same time, while I'm doing these more fun things, and more importantly, playing a different faction and different caster, which are doing different things than what I normally do, I'm learning about other strategies, and I might be thinking about how I could be incorporating this into my own faction. So even though we started this entire journey talking about, well, how am I going to be learning my opponent's stuff because it's so boring, now by pushing it to this level, we've made it so it's something fun and something we're actually going to enjoy. And again, the reason why we can do this is because we're in this new world of war table and just this openness of just like anytime you want to play, like, oh, random person in Poland, let's play. And oh, look this, I rolled this, so I guess I'm playing Retribution. I'll roll again. Oh yeah, okay, I guess I'm playing Gareth. All right, let's do this, right? Like that type of a thing I think is fantastic and people should be taking advantage of. So there you go. There you have it. That's how you can be learning other faction stuff. You can keep it boring. You can be saying, okay, I'm just going to read here. Better yet, you can be trying to give yourself incentive and attack the things that you know that you need to know better. Man, I lose against these things, so I need to learn that stuff. You can try and push it even further and trying to deploy the stuff and play the first couple of turns. If that's not enough, you're trying to break away from the things you're not incentivized to really learn, okay, set yourself up to a schedule so that you can just make sure consistently you're reading these things and you're staying up to date. And then if you have the time and you really want to be having a blast, man, just join a random tournament, take a random faction, random casters, and before you know it, you'll just know things very well because you played them. So there you go. Thanks for watching. I always love hearing your feedbacks. If you have anything else, please post it down below. And otherwise, we'll see you later, or plow you later, or whatever I said there. Bye. Did I say plow you later? Well, we'll just, not that.